with that, I'll transition to Sharon and your perspective.
Great, thank you very much. It's really, I appreciate so much a chance to have this conversation, and so I too join in thanking the Shankar Institute and the AFT for sponsoring this event and calling us together. And I will begin as well with a perspective on the matter at hand that actually goes back to the 2008 deliberations around teacher education federal policy and the design of the Teacher Quality Partnership Grants, which was early in my tenure at AACTE. I came to this position working for over 800 of the institutions that train teachers and other school personnel with a vision for reform that included more rigorous and vigorous clinical preparation, some measure of completion, some outcome measure that was valid and reliable, some means of understanding impact of program on K-12 learning, and interestingly, a unified, strong accrediting agency. There were 4 mandates. Think of how many are touched by this by these regulations. So the regulations arrive after several years of implementing the Teacher Quality Partnership Grants, which we strongly advocated, 2 rounds of funding over several years, in which case the program was zeroed out of every single budget. We fought to keep it in and keep the grants that had been awarded funded and the work underway continuing. It has become, the Teacher Quality Partnership Grants have become the model for supporting and incentivizing innovation in teacher education. What it requires is developing a residency model in partnership with a high-need school and school district so that your candidates will be engaged in learning their craft after having learned the intellectual foundation of teaching, working with a wide range, a variety of challenging situations, but under a very specific and well-structured mentorship and supervision so that they are oriented to working in difficult situations, but as a part of a professional community. The university or sponsoring program must make a 100% match to whatever the grant is. And that's required because this should not be taken as something you do for the duration of the grant. This is about changing everything. Changing the way you deploy your own resources, changing the way you develop your relationships, and even expend political capital at the local level, in the local community, to create those relationships. And it is about engaging to the point that your hands are on the till when it comes to helping to support and improve student learning of the children in that community. You don't get to say, oh, I just trained the teachers. You are a part of making it happen, or part of the reason it's not. That's how the partnerships were designed. And one further thing, Ben, it requires the program to track their candidates for at least 2 years into practice to understand the impact of their program on their candidates and on their success as practitioners. Now, hopefully, in that time, we'll also get our act together and figure out how to do that second thing of building these data systems. Now, the folks in Georgia tell me that what they're going to get out of Race to the Top is they'll have 2 things. When the dust is settled and the day is done, they'll have their partnerships and they'll have a data system. that they designed in collaboration with their colleagues in practice to understand a system, to be able to analyze from a system perspective where are the points of intervention that we need to proceed with further effort, greater scrutiny, further analysis, and to recognize the interconnectedness and interrelationship of the work that they do, university, K-12, and with community-based organizations as well. So it's a vision that we have now incorporated in our proposal, policy proposal for fixing the system. It's called the Educator Preparation Reform Act. It would replace the current Title II of the Higher Ed Act, which essentially is unauthorized at the moment, and say that educator preparation programs are now responsible for taking this approach, not just for classroom teachers, though that's monumental enough, but also with their leadership programs and other clinically based practitioners, so that the clinical component and the relationship with the world of practice becomes an integral aspect of the program that has to be developed, otherwise you can't have a program. There is no longer any such thing as being able to have a educator preparation program that is based on campus in the ivory tower, if there ever was an ivory tower, and that is sufficient. It's just not going to be sufficient anymore. And we've moved that view into the accreditation process. And that, I think, is a widely held consensus across the professional community. You know, the programs themselves don't have the authority to close themselves, nor will they. They don't seek that authority. But they do seek to be a part of creating a process whereby they can reflect on valid data to understand their productivity. That's why they worked as a professional community to create the product, the first EdTPA, the first performance assessment to evaluate the candidates as they complete their program. It is now used as a licensing tool in several states and being used by programs all across the country, now well over 600 of them, as a way of collecting data on candidate capacity. Can they actually teach? Fortunately, we see new products, new performance assessments coming to the fore to be tested and validated, if you will, by the professional community and by our broader community of interest and stakeholders, so that we have ways to understand. Are those completing educator preparation at least licensure ready? Then the responsibility to follow them into practice to understand the actual impact when they get there. Now, let me point out one other dimension of this partnership or clinical orientation that I think is important to mention. When we engage in partnerships in order to support candidates in a rigorous and vigorous clinical development regime, the programs are required to make sure the settings are adequate for that purpose. So it involves engaging with the practitioners at a given site to assure their candidates will see competent reading instruction, to ensure that their candidates will witness a competent intervention in math instruction at the 3rd grade. They will actually see a very competent teacher lead a discussion among diverse students who have names that some of these candidates had never even heard of before. They will witness real good practitioners, and they will become a part of working with that school staff in that culture to deliver competent services to those students. They will begin to own the responsibility of practice and become oriented to their work in such an environment. Now, these settings have to be created. They require the advocacy and the support of educator preparation to make it happen for some of those schools. And that is an added dimension of this partnership that we don't often think about. But some of the places in which we find the most, the highest need students, the most heartbreaking failures year after year, are schools to which we would not send our children or grandchildren. We're saying to our programs, my membership, you go into those schools and make them places where you would be proud to bring your children and grandchildren, because this is where competent practice happens. This is where the state of the art is being illustrated every day. This is where a new practitioner should learn the craft of the profession.